So, have you ever really stopped to think about what's going on in the head of someone who's just impossible to impress? It's a fascinating puzzle, right? Because what looks like they're just being indifferent, well, it's actually tied to some really deep and complex psychology. And today, we're going to unpack all of it.
I mean, we've all been there, haven't we? You're completely buzzing about something, maybe a movie or some big news, and you share it, and you just get nothing back. A little nod, maybe a blank stare. You're left thinking, hello, did they even hear me? It can be seriously baffling.
Our first instinct is usually to slap a label on them. We think, oh, they're just arrogant, or they're just disinterested. But what if we're totally missing the point? Because what we're seeing isn't some simple personality flaw. Nope, it's often a sign of some pretty deep psychological patterns at work.
Okay, so how do we crack this enigma? We're going to dive into 4 totally distinct psychological types that explain this whole hard-to-impress thing. Each one tells a completely different story, and you're going to want to stick around because I promise the last one is probably not what you're expecting.
All right, first up, let's talk about type 1, the disillusioned. Just imagine someone who used to be right there with the crowd, cheering for every little thing. But somewhere along the way, they saw behind the curtain and they realized that all the hype, it just didn't live up to reality.
This quote just nails it. See, this isn't about being a downer or rejecting happiness. It's about rejecting the illusion that some fleeting, superficial excitement is going to fix real, deep-seated problems. For them, being detached isn't about apathy. It's actually a sign of profound awareness.
And this brings us to this really powerful psychological concept, existential detachment. It's that point you reach when you realize all the energy you spend on, meaningless hype just feels, empty. They're not looking for the next shiny distraction. They're on a much deeper search for actual purpose. Now let's move on to our second type, the survivor. For these folks, being unimpressed isn't an attitude they choose. It's more like a scar, a quiet consequence of the major battles they've already fought and won.
Just let that sink in for a second. Their calmness was paid for with sadness. Wow. It's not that they don't have feelings, it's that they've already felt so much. After you've survived a truly terrible storm, the little everyday dramas just don't register the same way. Their calm wasn't a gift, it was forged in fire. And this really gets to the core of their psychology. I mean, when you've been through a hurricane, a little rain shower doesn't really feel like a crisis. It creates this kind of protective numbness, right? It's a psychological armor that keeps them standing when the rest of the world is freaking out.
Okay, on to our third type, the refocused. Now here's the thing with this one. It's not that their excitement is missing. Not at all. The key is that their passion is just aimed in a totally different direction, one that's incredibly personal and deeply meaningful to them. So this all taps into a cool psychological idea called diversified stimulation patterns. Think of it like this. Their brain's reward system, that little dopamine hit we're all after, it's just tuned to a different frequency. They don't get a thrill from just passively watching something. They need to get in there, to engage, to analyze, to find the real story inside the experience.
And that brings us to our fourth, and I'd say rarest type, the emotionally independent. This is the person who has completely stopped looking outside for applause because they finally learned how to clap for themselves.
This is all rooted in what's called self-determination theory. It's this powerful idea that true happiness doesn't come from what other people think of you. It comes from 3 internal things: autonomy, competence, and inner satisfaction. They don't need the world's hype to feel alive because they're too busy building their own rich, fulfilling world from the inside out.
So let's do a quick recap of these 4 incredible types. You've got the disillusioned, who's seen through the act; the survivor, whose calm is their armor; the refocused, whose passion is just pointed somewhere else; and the independent, who gets all the validation they need from within. 4 totally different paths, but they all lead to this same quiet strength.
And that's really the big takeaway here. What we might easily mistake for arrogance or just not caring is so often a sign of something much deeper: wisdom, resilience, intense focus, or true inner peace. Understanding these paths, it doesn't just change how we see other people. It transforms our judgment into empathy.
And that brings us to the biggest question of all. When you look in the mirror, which one of these types, or maybe a mix of them, do you see looking back? Go on, give it some thought, because the answer might just reveal as much about you as it does about everyone else.